Good evening, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tony Clifton here with the Main Street Cinema, the show where we talk about the finer points of filmmaking. You know who's a good filmmaker? At least who people say is a good filmmaker? Steven Spielberg. Wheelberg. Chicken Dealberg. So, folks, I will tell you something. That's Steven Spielberg. He's not a good filmmaker at all. Makes the film about Jaws. That poor shark did not do anything. In this town full of sharks, he's so optimistic. You blow up the shark. That is not how you deal things in Hollywood. Not at all. I mean, you watch a film, Spielberg is always pleasing with a giant boulder, chasing someone down there. That does not happen. Unless you have had too much to drink in a local LA club.
Whoa, hold on, Tony, hold on. You know, we have a whole podcast, a whole month, as a matter of fact, devoted to Spielberg. It's called Spielberg Month.
That sounds like a sham. I think you're putting me on.
No, I'm not putting you. Yeah, anyways, Tony, we're not here to talk about that, are we?
Of course we are. Look at us. We're talking about Jim and Andy, the Great Band. I noticed something is missing. That is why I am here. What is missing from this fine picture you folks are seeing out there? Why it is missing, I do not know. I blame George Shapiro. I blame that Andy Kauffman. Not Andy Kauffman. But, supposed to say, featuring a very special, contractually obligated appearance by Tony Clifton. Now, I don't know no Andy Kauffman. I don't know why we're spending time talking about Andy Kauffman. I don't even know who this Jim Carey is. But I'm here to make that right. A Stan Lee cameo, if you will, in the modern era.
All right. So we mentioned you. Can we move on?
I suppose so. Can I get a moist towelette?
Sure. Here, I'll digital moist towelette.
That has been an honor and a good bee. All right.
Wow, that probably went on a little longer than it should have, but hey, isn't that Kaufman-esque for you, Dragon?
Yeah, it probably confused a lot of people in the audience, but again, that's Andy Kauffman for you folks.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so seriously, what are we here talking about today? You can tell the folks.
We're talking about Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond, featuring a contractually obligated mention of Tony Clifton. And we mentioned him, folks. We mentioned him. Anyways, I'm sure we'll talk about him much more. So, Dragon, obviously, folks, we don't really have a ton of nostalgia or backstory on. I'm sure you have backstory on this, Dragon, but for me, I kind of, you just told me about it. You were really hyping me up. It sounded really cool. Like, oh my God, all these seemingly lost behind-the-scenes videos of Jim Carey doing method acting as Andy Kauffman. I'd never really seen Man on the Moon. I checked out Man on the Moon to get excited about it. Dragon, you're much more of the Kauffman expert, so go ahead. What's your take on this?
Oh, yeah, sure. And I'll just touch on a little bit here, too, folks, that in my youth especially, I was a huge Jim Carrey fan, so I definitely had a lot of nostalgia invested in this film going into it. But I guess where it all starts here is I saw this film. I saw Man on the Moon. I saw Man on the Moon. My grandfather and I, we have a great affinity for Man on the Moon. Because I was a big Jim Carrey fan. It was kind of he likes the history of Hollywood, especially. So we kind of bonded over that. And especially we would quote Tony Clifton lines to each other constantly. A lot of love for Andy Kauffman. Of course, we watched the show Taxi. So again, there's always a lot of stuff there. Regardless, so it was kind of a marriage of two things we liked. And again, my affinity for Jim Carrey. And I remember watching Man on the Moon, eventually getting on DVD. I noticed there's a lack of features, and there wasn't a lot you could really learn about the production of Man on the Moon because there was like this one feature on the DVD, and if you did some digging online, you'd be able to find a few videos alluding to this. Is the main bit of kind of lead-in of nostalgia, where nostalgia meets backstory here. Is that Jim Carrey, he famously went method. He delivered a fantastic performance as Andy Kauffman, Man on the Moon. That's the big takeaway from Man on the Moon. A lot of people don't really give this movie its due. They just mention Jim Carrey and they kind of move on. And, he just did a remarkable job in becoming Andy Kauffman. And Jim Carrey is very passionate about becoming Andy Kauffman. He, in fact, filmed his own audition, what he did. And there's a famous story about how Jim Carrey got the part, where Bob Zmuda, Andy Kaufman's real-life friend, who was played by Paul Giamatti in Man on the Moon. Bob Zmuda, who's also in this movie, He was instructed by Milos Forman. Danny DeVito told Jim Carrey about the role, and Jim Carrey had been kind of following Andy Kauffman for many years, and he's been prepared for the role. And he filmed this audition. What he did is when Bob Zmuda came by, says, "Okay, hey, you wait here. I'm going to go get the tape." And he had like the tape. He had Andy Kauffman footage playing on Jim Carrey's really nice fancy house. And while Bob Zmuda was waiting for a long time, he watched the footage of what he assumed, okay, there's Andy Kauffman footage. And Jim Carrey comes back, he gives him this paper bag, and he rips it open, and he reveals there's nothing in there. Well, what's the deal? He says, "You've been watching my audition." And it was amazing that what Jim Carrey did, this is from Bob Zmuda, so he may have embellished this, but I'm assuming I really hope it's true, that Jim Carrey's audition, which can be seen, you can see the Jim Carrey side, but unfortunately you can't see what the story is here, where it's the Jim Carrey recreation of Andy Kaufman was so convincing it was spliced into existing Andy Kaufman footage, like the Saturday Night Live Mighty Mouse routine, some Tony Clifton. Yeah, again, it was just an amazing likeness. And Bob Zmuda was instructed specifically by Milos Forman, do not give it to Jim Carrey. Just get the audition tape, get a vibe on the guy. Do not cast him. And he cast him, because you got the part. And he told Milos Forman the story, and it was the rest was history. So that was the thing that always fascinated me about the making of Man on the Moon. And so based on that and the whole method thing, it's like, oh man, he really got into this role. And there was that on the DVD, you had the story of it was just mentioned. I thought they were joking. I didn't know Danny DeVito said this. I assumed he was joking that, oh yeah, when he came to set as Tony Clifton, he actually came to set as Tony Clifton. He would have Limburger cheese in his pockets, and he smashed the car. And we see these scenes in this film. So when this was announced, I was just thinking, hey, finally some Man on the Moon stuff. But the big sell line in the trailer, because I heard this movie was coming. Hollywood Babylon, there was like an interview where Jim Carrey was saying, "Oh yeah, we're making this documentary." It's like a little, almost like an IFC sort of like a TIFF. I think like a TIFF film interview, TIFF film, like a film festival of some kind. Anyway, so basically the trailer eventually came out. I knew this was coming in 2017. I didn't know when. And then of course the trailers dropped around like a little before November, I guess. When it dropped up, my mind was blown by this one line in the trailer where it's Jim Carrey doing an interview. I was like, okay, Jim Carrey doing an interview. Really nice there. And it basically says the footage. The reason we didn't see footage on the DVD, folks, was that for almost 20 years, all the footage was withheld by Universal. And that blew my mind. That got me psyched out of my mind for this movie. So that's my personal connection to this. So like one sentence of background I have here, I guess, is the reason we have this film is that Jim Carrey, with that said footage, Jim Carrey, he shot with Bob Zmuda and Lynn Margulies, Andy Kaufman's girlfriend and his best friend Bob Zmuda. They documented the making of Man on the Moon. Ideally, they were going to have like on a DVD or something. They were going to release it to promote the movie, but Universal withheld it. And Jim Carrey told this to a documentary producer, Spike Jonze. And Spike Jonze, the wheels got turning in his mind. Says, okay, why don't we sit you down for an interview and basically use that footage and we make a documentary? And the rest is history. And this thing's getting ridiculously good reviews. And I've seen it 8 times. I agree with all those reviews.
So, Dragon, I feel like an idiot because I'm literally now finding out. I don't know. I guess I just wasn't paying attention to the credits or something, but Spike Jonze was the producer, and I respect the heck out of Spike Jonze for stuff like Where the Wild Things Are and Being John Malkovich. That adds another layer to this movie for me. I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, and it was just like casual conversations. Like Jim Carrey didn't have any intention. He wasn't legitimately pitching the movie. Just Spike Jonze, he had the initiative in getting the movie made.
Dragon, also another thing I think that the documentary doesn't really touch on is Jim Carrey's state at the time of this. Do you want to kind of briefly get into the Kick-Ass 2 incident and then kind of the fallout from that?
Oh yeah, sure. I was going to address in the comment. We can mention it briefly just to make sure we get it's important, so we should definitely get in there beforehand.
Yeah,
so
I think it's important to kind of lay the groundwork for where Jim is at the start of the interview.
Sure. So here's the interesting thing, folks, is that so Jim Carrey, as you see him in this this still here, and again, I think it's a great kind of still for the movie, by the way. Again, essentially this is it, because very much the hook of this movie. Don't get me wrong, as much as I'm psyched out of seeing the footage, and that was for me the big selling point. But what, especially on the rewatch, what keeps bringing me in more and more is how we work in Jim Carrey's it's like an afternoon interview almost, where Jim Carrey, as we see him now, and this is a Jim Carrey after. A lot of Jim Carrey, I would say,
kind of throwing away his career to a certain extent.
Yeah, Jim Carrey, I would say the best way I guess I can phrase it, at least the way I kind of have it phrased here, is that it's kind of a Jim Carrey who's been off, the Jim Carrey in this stage of his career, he's been taken off his game by life. Life's taken Jim
Mhm.
Carrey off his game. You know, he's taken some out there roles. And I'm not saying that kind of sent them down that path, but you know, it's just Jim Carrey. He's in a more Andy, and this is the big hook of the film. He's in a more Andy Kaufman like state than ever before. A point where he doesn't care about what's popular. He doesn't necessarily care about what the audience is going to be expect from Jim Carrey. He's just kind of doing films that kind of strike him in the moment almost.
Mhm.
And it's kind of where we have Jim Carrey in a very reflective. Basically, it's Jim Carrey at a state where he's not like the Hollywood icon we may have looked up to or aspired to, or just kind of very much just kind of lumped into big superstar Jim Carrey. This is what kind of a comedian can hope for in Hollywood that we saw back in the '90s, and the huge kind of staple of the '90s and early 2000s. Jim Carrey was. This is a very honest and emotionally raw Jim Carrey we have here, and I love that we just kind of have him straight. It's a straightforward Jim Carrey. There's no performance. There's no talking at his rear end. It's a very and again, the beard kind of accentuates that. It's a Jim Carrey unlike what you usually see before you.
And to me, Dragon, that absolutely was the main selling point for me. I was on the other side of the coin where I had sort of a passing interest in Man on the Moon before this movie, which obviously after this movie, I'm a lot more interested to kind of do a deep dive into Kaufman at some point when I have the time to do so. Especially the Carnegie Hall special. I'm really interested to get into the background on that. Regardless, Dragon, I watched Collider, you see.
Oh, yes, you watch Collider.
I watched Collider. And I remember when the Kick-Ass 2 situation went down, where essentially because of the gun violence going on in the country, and unfortunately that still continues to go on in the country, condolences, Jim Carrey maybe prophetically dropped out of the promotion of Kick-Ass 2. Now, Dragon, I never saw Kick-Ass 2, but one of the things I noted about is how it was a little bit mean-spirited. Like, Kick-Ass 1 is one of the movies I go to as an example of a movie where, to me, the tone of it is kind of off. And you know me and, like, movies with off tones to it. So it's not that Kick-Ass was a bad movie. It's just that I felt like it leaned a little bit too much into the mean-spirited direction. And so I could understand Jim Carrey's hesitation. Like, I didn't see Kick-Ass 2, but if it's anything like Kick-Ass 1, I could understand. But having said that, Dragon, that was sort of, I remember the people at Collider and other news sources covering that like it was a big, like, apocalyptic move on Jim Carrey's end, almost like, dare we say a Kaufman-esque move of, I don't care what the people think. That was a big turning point in his career, you know what I mean? And ever since then, he has been very radio silent to a certain extent before this interview. So that was, to me, the huge draw, this big iconic figure, as you said, Dragon, of the 90s and early 2000s. At one point, he was the highest paid actor in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Being reduced to just this guy, this bearded guy who's almost kind of a Luke Skywalker-esque hermit. So,
yeah.
All right. So I guess, Dragon, you want to set up the commentary?
Sure, folks. Of course, we're going to try and keep this as conversational as we can. I guess kind of chronologically conversational, but if we can swing it, what we're hopefully trying to do here is do a straightforward commentary at the same time, so you can link it up with us and listen along. We'll count you up on. Basically, what we do is 1, 2, 3, go. Kind of at least one thing. We go on go. Not 3. So 1, 2, 3, go. When you hear go, hit play on Netflix so you can watch this wonderful film with us, or again, just even hopefully you'll still be able to enjoy it even if you don't do that. But fingers crossed.
All right, Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond. 1, 2, 3, go. All right, you do a much better Clifton, Dragon. Or maybe I was playing Clifton the whole time. Maybe that was you doing Clifton just now.
Twinkle ding, twinkle die. Anyway.
Yeah, no, you do it far better.
This gig like you need a shotgun blast in the face. All right. So again, right here we have the Jim Carrey post life taking him off his game. Again, a more like Andy Kauffman than ever before, right before us, right there.
Yeah, and this is a trick that I really like with documentaries in general, starting with conversation before a take.
Yeah.
like this is not like I'd like to think that this it's not necessarily for the interview, or it wasn't intended to be, but it was more kind of like, all right, like how do you want the interview to start, Jim? And
Feels
he
like a
just kind
happy
of
accent. They kind of
yeah, and he just kind of starts musing about life, you know.
yeah. I think they just kind of had those moments by accident. They just worked it into like these pivotal moments in the film.
Which Dragon, I think you and I can both agree the best documentaries do. Like that's definitely a you know, a hallmark of something like Waking Sleeping Beauty or The Boys or any of the best Disney documentaries.
Of course. And now what's fascinating here is, of course, now in the beginning here we established the premise, and we also have like kind of the destiny of it all with the bloody Congos he procured from, you know, from Andy Kaufman's family.
He
And
literally
what's great
owned
here,
Kaufman's DNA.
he did. And this is so here's the audition tape I'm talking about. Now again,
It psyched you out of your mind when you first saw it, like so early, like we're less than a minute in, I think.
yes. Now here's the thing. So I still didn't get necessarily what I was hoping for. I wanted to see the whole spliced in footage, but what they did, and this is great, it's still great, is that we have all the Jim Carrey side of it, but what we do in the documentary was we edit it like the splicing. You see what I mean? So we have scenes where they will go back and forth between Andy Kaufman and Jim Carrey to confuse the viewer, and I think it's
Sure, yeah.
they'll show you the comparison. So at least they got the vibe of that in there, which I was still very pleased by. And I gotta acknowledge, like the first 4 minutes of this thing is great, because one, we have, you know, the most Jim Carrey we have of Jim Carrey on the set greeting everyone. Then the next day it's going to be Andy Kaufman on set
Right,
for the majority. Up in this like 4 minute opening here, where we set up the parallel for the meta adventure.
Yeah, it's very deep. It's you know, and like I said, it's just, you know, Jim just kind of going off on this sort of tangent about life and working its way in there.
Sure, and again, like the whole, like the point of Genesis, where, you know, he kind of figured out, how the heck am I going to play Andy Kaufman? And he figured, okay, what would Andy Kaufman do? He do something next level, like communicating with dolphins telepathically, and that kind of was a symbol of, okay, just envisioning what Andy Kaufman would do here, and then just essentially visualizing Andy Kaufman.
Like, okay, Andy's just like, step aside, kid. I've got this.
To the visualization belief that he has later on. So it's kind of, you know, if you imagine you're Andy Kaufman, you're going to be Andy Kaufman.
Sure.
And this shot, I think, is the most important shot. It's in the trailer. It's in all over the place. This is great. And in this moment, it's like, it's so great visually. We have a moment where he becomes Andy Kaufman. We hear said over that.
We literally
and the rest,
see in his eyes the transition between Jim and Andy right there.
Yeah, and with overlaid is, you know, from that point forward, it was out of my control, and you hear screams right after it. It's just perfect.
Yeah, great.
So again, now he's Andy Kaufman on the set, and this is just, again, such a great opening note. And we do kind of see the scenes, and whether they were shot chronologically or not, we do see the production unfold as the movie does, in pretty much chronological order.
Yeah, I really like how we use the found footage, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say found footage. It's not found footage.
Well, it was lost for 20 years, though, so, you know.
But we use the footage. At first, it's very much fly on the wall. You know what I mean? At first, it's very much like, oh, observe this crazy antics that are taking place. But as the movie goes on, it becomes more and more narrative driven, as I imagine the production became more and more entrenched and Kaufman-esque.
Now, this is cool right here, too. Ron Meyer and George Shapiro. This is the real George Shapiro. He has a really emotional moment in the movie for me. I love it. He has a great cameo in Man on the Moon I really love. But here's the fun thing. So Ron Meyer is right next to him. And you got to remember, Ron Meyer, and we're going to mention this later on, Ron Meyer's the guy who was on board for withholding the footage. But at the beginning here, he's all gung-ho for it. Like, yeah, hey, we got him. You know, he's so good. It's just like Andy Kaufman and him talking with George Shapiro about having to sell people on a comedian who's not a comedian.
Right. There's a great Carol Kane, of course.
Of course, and Judd Nelson. I love. Sorry, I'm thinking of something else I saw today. Sorry. It's the great Judd Hirsch.
Mm-hmm. So, Dragon, I'm going to have a lot to say in terms of the whole idea of a comedian being pigeonholed by one line. Because that's something I went through with one of the people on this earth that I respect the most, which is Dave Chappelle. Go on a brief personal thing with this here for a second, if you don't mind. Chappelle, of course, had Chappelle's Show. The defining line of Chappelle's Show was, "I'm Rick James, bitch." And Dragon, I'm just going to set that up as a thesis statement, because "I'm Rick James, bitch" haunted Chappelle in the same way that "thank you very much," or whatever the hell the line is, haunted.
No, it's thank you. It's thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so you know what I mean. There, like, to me, I experience that, like, where I respect the hell out of Dave Chappelle, far beyond the whole "I'm Rick James, bitch." But Dave Chappelle's career is almost unfortunately defined by "I'm Rick James, bitch," in the same way that Kaufman's career was unfortunately kind of, at least in the mainstream eye, defined by "thank you very much." It really rings true to me with that part of Andy's character.
Now, this is great here. Now, we're getting a good barometer on Andy Kauffman for any strangers who just kind of happened upon the movie here, where it's, we have Mighty Mouse, which, by the way, this is the first SNL episode ever, by the way. He was the musical guest in the first episode of SNL.
That's crazy to think about.
And the Great Gatsby gag, where he goes out on stage when everyone wants vodka and he reads The Great Gatsby, basically subverting what people are expecting with the comedian. And this is what got Milos Forman into the movie. He saw him do this, and he respected the crap out of the real life Andy Kaufman when he saw him perform that live.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the movie got made, that Great Gatsby routine. And what we have here just already, and this is the thing I love throughout the movie, it intensifies in a beautiful way as we go forward. We have the parallel between Jim Carrey's upbringing and Andy Kaufman's upbringing, kind of in as a young man experiencing Andy Kaufman, and we're going to get more and more clever with that as it goes on.
Oh, it goes down the rabbit hole as we go through. It's just like it becomes so crazy. It's just like, this is life imitating art, imitating life.
Yeah, it's again, short, along with Disaster Artist, the most meta movie of 2017.
I mean, Disaster Artist, yes, but like Disaster Artist is almost like trying to be this to a certain extent.
Yes, but we don't have time to go into it.
This naturally is.
Yes. Also, what's cool, it already passed, but we established the connection to his father when Jim Carrey points out that Andy Kaufman wore the blazer on stage to basically as the foreign man to get love and acceptance from his father. And of course, there's a big father story with Jim Carrey in this.
Yeah, I love the father stuff throughout, the comparisons between Jim's father, Andy's father, and of course, Dragon. That Jim and Andy are very much two different characters in this movie, and I love how the narrative explains that. You know what I mean? It's all so clear.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I really love is there's this great moment. Again, it's a big trailer moment as well, but it's so the way it plays here, where Jim Carrey says, and who do you know? And we basically take the facts that if you were a big Jim Carrey fan like I was, know certain truths about the guy, like the $10 million check story, and it's going to be coming up soon. I mean, that's why I'm getting that out here. I love that it's a great subversion of what you know. And again, Jim Carrey saying, who do you think you know? And again, we see something like his interview on Oprah. It's like, oh yeah, well, that's where we heard about the $10 million check story, where we learn the what built to that moment. So again, it's like there are layers that we're not seeing that we're going to be able to see in this movie.
What is the nature of celebrity but like snapshots of these people's lives that we just kind of put so much focus on?
It's like all about setting up for the photo, though. That's where the real story is. Like what gets you to like holding in place for the camera.
Oh yeah.
There we go. Here's the $10 million check story. And again, him just saying he's the guy. That's one of the things he's known for. And just saying, hey, it's the guy who seemingly just he's so successful he can write a $10 million check for a 10-year goal he had.
Exactly. In the same way that Kevin Smith was famous for making a $30,000 movie.
Yeah. And again, this is 97. This is about a year before Man on the Moon's because they made it in 98 and it was released in 99.
Uh-huh.
Now again, this is great here, and I think what's not being said, and I could be wrong, because I could have sworn he said he asked his father for a bicycle, and I want to say that means his father secretly got him that bike. Always my read on this, because the whole visualization thing, he eventually had a bike which he put in Eternal Sunshine. I would imagine that his going to his father, whether it was said or not, you imagine he would ask a parent for it. And I like to think his father came through for him. That's just my 2 cents on that.
That's nice.
Yeah. We use the Truman Show very, very strategically in this film, and Truman Show is one of Jim Carrey's most interesting movies.
Dragon, if Adventure Blue Dude is watching me right now, he's going to kill me, but I still haven't seen Truman Show.
I think you'd really like it, Tiki.
I know. I'm sure I would. I'm sure I would. I really need to, especially after this.
Oh, yes. But I mean, yeah.
Think about doing a Jim Carrey-thon at some point.
Wait, I'm a huge Carrey fan, so I'd be down for that. So,
like The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, like basically the big three, and then a couple side ones. I don't know.
Now, of course, here's what built. So again, we're going through the repertoire of Jim Carrey's career here, where again in the beginning he was famously the rubber man. He was the rubber-faced comedian, where he did these remarkable impressions where he could physically embody someone overdoing a voice of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he could just snap right into it, like you're saying now with James Dean and Steve Martin.
That really is pretty crazy. The James Dean.
He's also, I don't know if you know this thing, he's also double jointed, so he can play his leg like a guitar.
Oh yeah, of course, sure.
Yeah, that's it. And this again is fascinating. We're seeing the origin of Ace Ventura. So again, we are hitting the big hallmarks of Jim Carrey, pre Man on the Moon here, where again these are the things that built his career. Where this leads into Ace Ventura, the whole alrighty then, the high energy and just kind of freeing the audience from concern. And we're seeing the seed that's being planted here very cleverly is a guy who's not thinking like the rest of us here, kind of like Andy Kauffman here, where he's a guy who's considering the audience's reaction, not necessarily playing against it, but he's trying to imagine that.
Yeah, he was all about eliciting a response, and I mean, he played it a little safer than Kauffman, but at the same time, there are moments in his early career that we'll get to throughout the documentary that do have shades of Andy.
Yeah.
I really need to look into his In Living Color stuff, Dragon. I haven't seen any of that. Have you?
I have, yeah. Not ever. I think I have. I might have all the seasons, but I haven't watched them all. I just watched watched the Jim Carrey stuff mostly. I've seen him do his Stallone impression. I've seen him do his, of course, Fire Marshal Bill.
Yeah.
I one regret there's not enough Liar Liar in this movie because my God, I love Liar Liar.
Liar Liar, I feel like it's an underrated gem, right?
Well, again, I want to say, a part of me wants to say Liar Liars is most of what pleases me, Tiki, is I think The Mask is now getting the proper spotlight years later, that people are loving The Mask more and more. It's more nostalgically charged now. And no, this is great. Speaking of The
Mask has been like always his most popular movie. I mean,
that's the thing.
Based on the conceit of it.
True. I always felt that one for years early on, though, like in the early 2000s, it was just kind of glazed over, though. I always felt that way.
I never felt that way. That's funny because maybe it's a regional thing, but here in California, The Mask is like super popular. It's always been super popular.
At the very least, it's like not. Again, I'm not saying it's like not beloved. I'm just saying it's not talked about as much as something like Liar Liar or Me, Myself, and Irene. It's like it's not like a conversation.
That's funny, Dragon, because down here, Liar Liar and Me, Myself, and Irene are kind of like the hidden gems, and then stuff like Dumb and Dumber and Ace Ventura and The Mask are like the ones that everyone talks about. So I swear it must be just a regional thing.
Maybe. I never considered that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, also, I love that at least we got a little bit of here. I wouldn't have mind more because I just love when we pulled The Mask for reference. Because again, The Mask is entirely what Jim Carrey's doing with this film, essentially becoming another person. Mm-hmm. And now this is great. I love the build.
The Jim Carrey performances that are talked about most here in California are the dramatic roles, like mostly Eternal Sunshine. People in California love Eternal Sunshine.
Anyway, so this is great. I love the build-up to Tony Clifton, one through the Andy Kauffman side here. And again, we know, okay, Jim Carrey's not coming to work tomorrow. Like Andy gets the day off tomorrow, and then we're seeing this whole pull here with the talk show interview about Tony Clifton denying up and down that he is Tony Clifton. And again, now this is one of the big moments going into this film I was waiting for, because I heard Danny DeVito share the stories about this, where Tony Clifton showed up and he wrecked a car and he smelled of Limburger cheese.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really see the cheese in here, but in his pockets, the idea is he'd have cheese in his pockets and he'd shake your hands and you'd be smelling of Limburger cheese all day.
Dragon, have I ever told you the story of the computer teacher who used to dress as Uncle Fester every Halloween?
I vaguely remember it, Tiki. I remember you saying
Okay, well,
something like
the
that.
only reason it relates to this is that he'd have garlic in his pockets, and he'd also like have, like eat a bunch of garlic and not brush his teeth and have like garlic breath. And so it'd be like, like Uncle Fester, like all garlic, like he'd go really method with that too. So it kind of reminds me of the Clifton thing a little bit.
Now,
He'd like get up in your face and like, like, hello, like breathe in your face.
Right.
Anyways.
Now, I love this conceit. I love the conceit that he shows up with a bag on his head because he is he doesn't want anyone to see him just as Jim Carrey. He wants to be seen only as Tony Clifton.
Right.
And again, he's just being as obnoxious as he can in the makeup trailer. He's playing his loud introduction. He's playing his own theme music in the introduction there.
He has arrived. He is here.
I have arrived.
God.
He's got the jails and everything, and as far as I know, he has real liquor on him at all times. When he's drinking liquor, it's real liquor.
Michael Keaton wouldn't approve, Dragon.
And again, right here, we have Ron Meyer yet again. Yeah, again, he's loving it initially, but again,
like, oh boy, like kind of like a Simpsons like collar tug, like you know.
Yeah. But again, I love that we can see it unfold. Like initially, it's like they're kind of saying, "Okay, that's a cool thing." And of course, it's going to grate on the studio later on. And again, this entertained me to know, and the fact that poor Milos Forman, and he's going to say later on, "I have never been intimidated."
The most relatable character in the whole movie, I think. He's got a great arc.
Of course, Milos Forman, director of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I guess Jim Carrey does a great impression.
One take, Tony. I will be so indebted to you.
One take, where you do it differently. Just one take more.
Oh God.
Christ. I love that. I love the rapidness of poor Milos Forman's responses. Like he's not pausing at all. It's like, is it frustrating? It is. But I mean, yeah, I love later on where the thing with Foreman is that he is this is a guy who's dealt with Jack Nicholson, yet Tony Clifton intimidates him. I've never been intimidated by another man, but I am intimidated by Tony Clifton. This is kind of funny because in real life, Tony Clifton, he brought when he was on the taxi set, he did bring actual prostitutes. Now, I'm not saying these are actresses, but what I'm saying is he's hitting on them like they were prostitutes. This, what's going on? I love that this poor girl here. She's like, oh God, it's like it's a sound. Even she knows what a sound check is.
Yeah, sounds working.
Working fine. Fine, wine, dime. Got a roll of dimes.
Anyway. Got a roll of dimes. Yes, indeed.
Again, just the format here is just like, he mellows after lunch. He's just these. Now, this blew my mind too. Here is the fact that Tony Clifton, in full makeup, he would drive the Universal lot and he would bother Steven Spielberg.
Yes, I'm sure that just tickled your fancy so much, Dragon.
It did.
It almost kind of it's almost kind of like a snake eating its own tail of, like Spielberg breaking into the studio, like early in the early days of his career.
Oh my God, I didn't think it. You're right. That's brilliant.
Yeah, well, thank you. I have my moments.
Yeah, it's great. The thing is the fact that he's critiquing Jaws, because like the shark was the shark was like, I won't talk the real shark.
He doesn't have to appeal to the masses. That's what real filmmaking is.
This is the fact that he's calling Spielberg a shark in that moment over Jaws, like the real sharks, like the Hollywood sharks. Okay, now this sequence I love. Pulling the I've Got to Be Me, and we're intercutting with the Tony Clifton shenanigans on set here.
Oh, it's great editing.
Yeah, I mean, this film is so fantastically, and that's the thing I got really on a critical read.
I really like. It's got no chance because it's Netflix, but
Yeah,
man, this film deserves to be nominated for best editing at the Oscars. It really
or
does.
best documentary. It should be in the running for documentary.
Oh, I think it has a good shot for best documentary, at least a nomination.
I hope so. I really do because it's getting.
I think when it comes to other categories outside of like documentary, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be down for it. I don't know if the Academy would because
I
the
don't know.
Academy's fickle, but you know.
I absolutely
Academy's
think
fickle.
it deserves editing, but anyways.
And again, now Jim Carrey, and what we have here with Jim Carrey giving some perspective on the Andy Kauffman here and showing that there was a method to the madness. That the point of Tony Clifton is that he's an anarchist and he's kind of freeing, and you can just
It's Corey Feldman.
It's Andy Kauffman kind of voicing all his frustration in life out through this one pain body bad guy wrestler character. Because the idea of Tony Clifton, he's a bad guy wrestling act, and Andy Kauffman as a youngster, he's a wrestling fan. That's why he later on he goes to he contacted Jerry the King Lawler because again secretly they had a friendship in real life. So
right.
He's always a huge wrestling fan. That
I'm really
that
excited
definitely played the
whole stuff in this movie.
Of course. Yeah, I remember Clifton's watching this opening scene here, and again, he's not having it because he doesn't like Kauffman. I've seen enough.
By the way, I really love the opening scene of Man on the Moon Dragon. I can't stress that enough. Just the whole idea of like, hey, this is Andy Kauffman. If you don't like it, then leave right now. This is a litmus test.
Oh yeah, and this is great too here, where we have these moments in the movie where both Andy and Tony call out Jim Carrey, and it's this fascinating thing of Jim Carrey. He's kind of going out to lunch for this movie essentially, where he's not there yet. He's being confronted with this years later about what deep truths he said about himself through another character, calling himself a coward. And if you look at Jim Carrey's repertoire, I mean, he was consistently for a lot of movies before he gets into like the Truman Show and basically it was Truman Show, this, and then Eternal Sunshine.
And then The Majestic, but we don't have to talk about that one.
My point is like not including Me, Myself, and Irene, you had 3 dramatic performances almost back to back.
And even Me, Myself, and Irene was a little bit more like offbeat and dark than the normal Jim Carrey thing. And then of course you had stuff like The Cable Guy too, which was also kind of a transition.
Yeah, what I'm saying is like there was like a period there like '94, like the year of '94, that was all like Jim Carrey as known for being kind of the wacky guy.
I still can't believe that all 3 of those movies came out in the same year. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And Dumber the Mask. Like, goddamn, talk about a repertoire right there.
Oh, yeah.
That's a hot streak. I am so exhausted. This guy, he never really loses his cool. You know what I mean? He's just this is...
Well, again, we have a moment here, which is really sweet, where he's on the phone with Jim Carrey, and this is the moment that defines him here, where he's not losing his cool, where he would just call Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey hits him with this insane response, which is awesome, where he's saying, you could fire them, and I could do an impression of them. And there's that moment of pause, and this guy he's like at wit's end with these 2 personalities, and no, I don't want it to stop, because again, he knows this is good filmmaking, and he's such a good filmmaker, he can recognize that. No, we got to keep this is a rare gem. We can't lose this. It's torture, but we can't lose this, and that's something to respect the heck out of Milos Forman for.
And of course, there is a lot of Tony Clifton in Man on the Moon, and I got to think that maybe this was a reason why, because it's just so invasive to the set.
Now, the I'm Batman gag, one that made me laugh a great deal. But aside from that, the I'm Batman thing, I wonder if it's because before this movie he had done Batman Forever. I gotta wonder.
Right.
All right. So here, we have this trippy. It's kind of a trippy experience for Andy Kaufman's family. I got to imagine him having. Yeah, I remember this movie when it was made. It was at least 14 years after Andy's death, and now they have him back. It's definitely very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, it's I think the title, "The Great Beyond," and what it means, it's very prophetic to the rest of the movie. You know what I mean? How Andy literally, like, the spirit of Kauffman is somehow in this performance. You know, it's like there's a layer. It's like it's an unexplainable kind of spirituality here.
It's like the best way I could describe how you know it's just instantly it's a great performance is that it's like he's skinnier than Andy Kauffman, but again, it's like the performance, like you don't even pay attention to that, like that any physical discrepancies, because again, he's just he's communicating the guy like a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is great here, where he's having this thing with Jerry Becker, the actor who's portraying Stanley Kauffman, and again, initially it's all I'm proud of you. And we're going to see just the infectious melodrama that unfurls itself.
And Drake, I truly do think, Man on the Moon, it's a pretty good movie. I truly think all the behind the scenes stuff is just infinitely more fascinating. A Man on the Moon or anything. I'm just saying, like, all this meta stuff, like, the stuff with his family, Kaufman's family reaching out to him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're going
to... You know what we're going to one day have to do, Dragon?
What?
There's going to have to be a movie about the production of Man on the Moon, like a biopic about the production of Man on the Moon.
We could pitch it.
I'm sure we could.
Anyway, so yeah, this scene is a crazy scene here where, it's like, too late! It's just he's yelling at his father in such a realistic, such a realistic manner. It gets to the makeup girl. It's just like home. It's just again, I love that Jim Carrey years later is reflecting on, oh my god, yeah, it's insane how just being that method, how it infects a set.
And I'm sure there's plenty of moments in Jim Carrey's mind looking back where it's like, holy shit, what did I do? How did I affect those people?
I think you can kind of see Giamatti holding back a little bit of laughter in that scene.
Oh, I love Giamatti.
And I really liked him in that movie too, by the way. It's an understated role, but he's good in that. And what's cool here too, this is a good build
with Jim. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's unclear how, because
exactly.
So here's the thing: it's not as clear cut as like we get Jim Carrey at the very beginning. There are very few moments in the movie, few moments where Jim Carrey. I mean, the idea is he could go home as Andy Kauffman or Tony Clifton, but you got to imagine there's going to be a little bit of a reboot period where he has to be Jim Carrey. Then he's going to get back into it. It's not like Franco just keeping a voice on set making disasters. He's going home as these guys, and it's a question of when does it wear off.
Right.
So again, we have some good build up for the Lars stuff.
The height comparison, I think, is a good one.
Yeah.
Oh God, here we go.
Probably the most meta element of the movie is how life imitating art is, or life misinterpreting art but making it art anyway. Is this Lars stuff here where it's so. So great. Again, just Milos pleading with Andy just to calm down here. God. Just the idea that, he's I'm sorry, there's so many meta layers it's kind of hard for me to get to here. The idea is that...
Oh, I know. There's a lot to break down here.
Andy Kauffman and Jerry Lawler were partners in real life. Andy Kauffman went to Lawler and says, hey, let's have a feud. All of that stuff was pre-planned, and they hammed it up. And the movie also showcases this. Mm-hmm. But what Andy 2.0 is doing here is he is aware, like he knows about the friendship, but he creatively is against it, saying, you know what, I'm not sure about the friendship that we're ultimately going to reveal here. I'm not sure about that. And being aware of this, what he's doing is he's in character on top of being in character. Andy Kauffman.
Yeah.
Doing here where Andy Kauffman is being in character to get the performance out of Jerry Lawler to replicate.
It's so crazy.
The fakery, which is genuinely getting under Lawler's skin. It's kind of cosmic payback for what Jerry Lawler did, in that, he faked all this stuff he had a fake feud being a wrestler. He faked something with Andy Kaufman. It's kind of like a fun cosmic comeuppance for him. Or now you're going to have an actual feud with an Andy Kaufman. It's like definitely the most trippy part of the movie is all the Jerry Lawler.
I would also say it's probably the most tension-filled part of the movie, because you legitimately, you don't know if Lawler is just going to give Jim Carrey a shiner at any point, And
now, one of the other things I heard, again, Danny DeVito is like one of the guys who said this, that Jim Carrey, and we don't see it in this movie, but I believe it definitely could have happened after seeing this movie, that Jim Carrey, there would be nights where he would go home as one of these characters, and he'd come back, and Jim Carrey would have like a busted lip. Or the point is, like he might have gotten into a fight with Tony Clifton at times.
Oh no! Oh god!
And they do allude to that in the movie. They're saying that Jim Carrey, when he would sleep, he would have like Andy Kaufman and Tony Clifton wrestling in his mind.
Oh Jesus Christ!
It's kind of scary, right?
Okay, at this point, I'm kind of on Lawler's side. I'm like, all right, he's moving the trailer around. It's like,
yeah.
But that's kind of the fun thing about the movie. You know what I mean? There is a certain point where Jim is going too far in this performance.
And yes, and again, we're having you're right, that tension is being laid out there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And at the same time, it's like, this is what's even more meta about, is that Jim Carrey is doing what, like, Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler would escalate things in, like, again, Jim Carrey says, where if you get a broken nose, sometimes you get a broken nose. That's how it is, and that's how they did act it. Like, Andy Kaufman would push him. He wouldn't tell him everything, but he'd say it would be cool if we did this, and then he'd just kind of start, and then Lawler would just fill in the blanks when they were acting their feud.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, whatever happens, we're just going to roll with it. But we're cool with it deep down. In this case, it's the same thing. We're not cool with it because I don't want him to do this stuff. And the Hulk wannabe thing.
Oh God!
I gotta tell you, Lawler aged really well. It looks almost identical to how he used to.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few cameos, like specifically, like the Taxi cast members look pretty much the same.
There's a fascinating bit, and this is the stuff that sells you on, is how great Jim Carrey is as Kaufman here. When he's doing this interview afterwards, where he went in the Latka outfit, the way his eyes move, you can see the way his eyes move as Andy Kaufman, that embodies who Andy Kaufman was, but also it's like like that thing I showed you in Batman: Death of the Family, where you can read people by their eyes. It's kind of like that sort of thing, where you can see. It's a question of how much of Jim Carrey is coming out in the eyes versus how much of it's an Andy Kaufman, twitch.
Which is the really freaking trippy part about the movie as we go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of this thing.
Because what he's doing right here is he's connecting the backgrounds where Jim Carrey had trouble early in life, where Andy Kaufman, he had trouble later in life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And again, that's the thing we do definitely have addressed in the movie, where there's a deep down fear that if he got better, he wouldn't be funny. If he were cured, every comedian has this sort of fear. If they get better,
yeah, absolutely.
Every comedian has a fear if they get better, they're not going to be any funny. If the tragedy behind the comedy disappears.
Hell, Dragon, even as a podcaster who's like a manic, like I've got some mental issues, and I even feel the same way. Like, oh my God, if I got better, would I kind of lose my podcasting craft, whatever craft that is? So yeah, that's a universal experience, I think, for anyone who's in any sort of artistic medium.
And here's something cool too, is that now Jim Carrey, as he voices here, he always hates the electronic press kits. He always hates that, and I've seen him do like God knows how many of those things, and it kind of adds a new level there.
And this is definitely the closest we get to a mention of the Kick-Ass 2 situation, because the Kick-Ass 2 situation was when he basically just put his foot down on that.
Or basically you're doing this, you sit down, you're in the chair, and it's like, hey, it's setting someone up for a question that's going to be edited into a bonus feature.
Mm-hmm.
We highlight that, Andy Kaufman's real-life girlfriend, she directed all this footage. And Bob Zmuda, which is, adds a great personal touch to it, by the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Again, Bob Zmuda, he's always very pivotal in the Andy Kaufman stuff, because he's the guy who egged him on, saying, it's like if George Shapiro was, and you see this in the Man on the Moon movie, which is an element I really love about how George Shapiro is the father figure, Bob Zamunda is the older brother saying, "Yeah, let's do
it." Right.
And then here's the big again. Here's essentially what we do here, and this is great. And again, from the story, the plotting of this movie, I love it. We're with as far as we're going to go with the premise of technically the movie kind of ends here. Technically, where Jim Carrey's laying out Andy's laying out the fact that the Universal's not going to release this footage. They're going to seize this footage at the end of the production, which is okay. That's where we get the premise of the movie. And after this, we backtrack to understanding Jim Carrey. And again, what we're doing, this is the thing that I love so much on the rewatch. After this moment, what we're going to do is we link up with Tony Clifton, then with Andy Kauffman. We see Jim Carrey's backstory. Then we check in with Tony Clifton, which, by the way, this Jackie Kennedy thing cracks me up. It's really dark, but I just think it's really funny. God help me. I mean, for Tony Clifton to make this joke, it makes all sense.
Yes.
Just in panic. But what we're doing here, so again, we saw Andy Kaufman's audition. Well, we're going to see Jim Carrey's audition for Saturday Night Live, and later on, we're going to see Andy Kaufman's audition for Saturday Night Live. And what we're doing is we're paralleling them in the best example where next time we see Tony Clifton, it's going to show you realities blending, where Jim Carrey, the Playboy Mansion thing is where we're going to check in with Tony Clifton, where it's reality blending with Jim Carrey's reality and the Andy Kaufman reality blending to a scary place. And when we see it with Andy Kaufman, that's going to be the Jerry Lawler thing. Mm-hmm. So it's like we have those two moments with those two personalities, where it's just like it's like a Swiss watch, to quote Peter Gould.
Yeah.
I guess more on that later, but yeah.
Wait for just one moment. All right, I'll be right back.
All right, so this is interesting here with, again, we're keeping Jim Carrey's father definitely a present here, and in doing so, the loving father questioning, so what are you going to do when you make it? And he's saying, well, I'm on the Tonight Show. If that's not making it, I don't know what it is. That's always been the high of highs as a comedian. You go on the Tonight Show, and his father getting the legitimate question of, okay, well, what after that? And that's kind of what Jim Carrey found. It's not exactly easy to break into the stratosphere of Hollywood. So we're starting small with stuff like In Living Color, which essentially is like you can't get on SNL, but you can get on something like a Fridays, or in this case, like in Living Color.
All right, I'm back. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Just make sure.
Now again, we have the psychic thing, and this psychic thing is awesome. Where the psychic, read his palm and predicted that he'd do 3 movies in a year that are going to make him a household name, that he would never be, they couldn't be knocked down, and that's the reason Jim Carrey was a name brand for those 3 movies in that year.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like you could just imagine. Like I've never heard of such a 1-2-3 punch. It's like, I've heard of a 1-2 punch, but I've never heard of a 3-way punch quite like that before.
Oh yeah, it's such a rare thing. And 94 of all years to have like 3 of the biggest movies all with the same guy.
Was it Jurassic Park 94?
No, that was 93.
Ah, you're right. My bad. I should know that.
You know what? I will say this though. So there's not a lot of Courtney Love in the movie. I think just wanted to get her in. That kind of shows like, hey, there's Courtney Love, and she was okay. She was good. She was a good Lynn.
Yeah.
Just kind of appears. I just feel it's like Lynn Margulis saying, hey, I was representing the movie too.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna nitpick, this might be one of the, he kind of gets a little bit away from the Jim and Andy side of things, but it's like, yeah,
it's only
people some credit.
It's like a minute, it's not hurting anyone. It's for like a minute and a half.
It's hurting me, Dragon. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, bring Clifton back.
Michael Stein. I never heard of Stein. R.E.M. I can't have the full word.
So yeah, Dragon,
So yeah, the rest.
what you were talking about with the structure, though, it's really kind of fascinating to me how this movie, sort of, because it works out so naturally that I don't even really notice that it ends. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, I'm so looking. It just caught me so off guard in the rewatch, like how brilliant a move it was. Where we're going to this movie in its premise is about a guy going method where it's it's the reality of this reality blending with this fictional world you're in, but you're reality fusing with fiction, where we take Tony Clifton into the outside world, and it's interesting, but it's also kind of scary putting Tony Clifton in the real world.
Oh yeah, I mean that very idea at its core is like pretty terrifying.
And then kind of the meta pinnacle where it's like, okay, we're literally life is imitating art in the ring with Jerry Lawler, only now it's for real. And that's what I'm saying. I love, and what's fascinating to me is the fact we get that one with
news reports themselves are calling it Kauffman-esque. It's like it's on the actual news.
Yeah. And again, what's so great is that we spent time with Andy, so we had Andy established, and then building up to that, we spend time with Jim. So now we establish our two sides of the fusion. Okay, we have the Jim Carrey side of the fusion, and we have the Andy Kauffman side of it. And of course, when they blend together, we see that in those two segments.
So does that make Clifton Fusion Scrooge?
Oh, maybe not Scrooge, but definitely Fusion Lounge comedian. Yes.
Right. All right. What's wrong? Why can't I play Ebenezer?
Now, some people have disputed amongst the taxi actors that Andy Kauffman wasn't that bad on set, and but the thing is, like, he was professional on set. I mean, he did his lines and everything as Luck, and not counting the Tony Clifton event. But I mean, he was. I mean, the idea though is, Andy Kauffman, he was still very anti-sitcom. He just hated being boxed into like being the the Fonzie with a line. He always regretted that. So I mean, that was still accurately reflected in that movie.
Sure.
It's not exactly in the movie, but Jim Carrey, he did start off in like on not a sitcom but a TV show, and I think it shows that Andy Kauffman gets a show and he can't stand it. Jim Carrey can't exactly get a sitcom that early in his career. Mm-hmm. It's like one has it, the other one doesn't.
Well, I mean, in Living Color, though, of course, the big standout thing was he was like one of the few white cast members in a mostly black cast. So that was that was a big subversive thing right there. Like a pasty white Canadian guy. Full of African American comedians. So it did kind of make him stand out in a way within the comedy crowd. This guy.
Yeah. And what's addressed here, we have some great stuff addressed here. And again, part of me wishes we used the mask just a little more, but I mean, it's fine. We use moments like this, I'm happy.
I feel like they use the mask just for the symbolism of like, oh, he's putting on the mask. Oh, he doesn't need the mask.
No, I mean, like right here when they use the ending from the mask and the hopeful moment, and we kind of have that hopeful thing where Jim Carrey's reading into each movie I do is a little bit reflective of me and that stage of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And something to get into. I'll say a little bit now is that what's interesting about Jim Carrey's movies too is that a lot of them, is particularly The Mask. Of all movies, The Mask, they represent his father. He plays his father in The Mask as Stanley Ipkiss. Like Liar Liar in The Mask, he plays his father in Liar Liar and The Mask because his father did the claw from Liar Liar. His father did that with him. It's the claw. And look, just with Eternal Sunshine, look, I love the performance in Eternal Sunshine. I love the concept of it. It's hard for me to watch. I think it's a.
Oh, it's hard for me to watch too, brother. I mean, it's a hard to watch movie. It's like Requiem for a Dream in that way.
Well, what I mean is like it's not. I mean, it's like literally. It's. I don't mean it's like emotionally hard to watch. I mean, it's hard for me to watch in terms of like visually. The visuals I think come at me a little strange.
Oh,
it's like
well,
it's like
no, I'm just kidding.
I'm saying it was like they were trying to do an Inception level kind of take on a dream world before we kind of figured that out. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's kind of hard for me to process in some way.
It's different
from the movie. I'm just saying
So I love this Michelle Gondry story, by the way.
Yeah.
Right now, it is beautiful. Please don't get well. And it's like, I don't know, Drake, there's something kind of like moving and poetic about that on one end, but at the same time, it's also kind of like, as Jim says, like kind of like a big sort of thesis statement on how fucked up Hollywood is. Like, we are not shooting for another year. Please stay depressed.
I mean, it is twisted to ask someone to stay in that headspace. Yeah. I mean, here we have like the. I mean, this
performance in that movie. I mean, I think he took the advice though.
Sure, and here we have just this is crazy right here. We see a Jim Carrey cameo where again Jim Carrey's on set for a moment, and with a move of his arm, he becomes Tony Clifton. What? You stink!
God.
And again, I like that when he becomes Tony Clifton there, you know, we're kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe. Like we're lingering on Tony here. The way we do with the music and everything just feels like, yeah, it's really, I feel drained watching it in a good way. I can feel the drainingness of like dealing with this guy from day to day in this sequence.
Totally. Like Tony Clifton is very much, you know, in a Kauffman kind of way, you know, just kind of hate him, but at the same time, that's the point of him. He's a very hateable sort of character, and it's a character that's meant to get under your skin. It's a character
he's a bad guy performer. You're supposed to hate him, absolutely. By the way, it's the whole looking at Jim Carrey's filmography and how it connects with his life does remind me a little bit of the whole Spielberg thing from Dawson's Creek to keep the Spielberg thing going, by the way.
Oh, God.
Like Dawson saying, hey, every movie Spielberg did chronologically, it reflects what was going on in his life at that time.
Uh-huh.
This is great hearing. I love how Dan DeVito, yeah, remember, he's a producer on the film as well. He brought Jim Carrey into the fold, along with Bob Zmuda. So, you know, I suspect I expect he will get a lot of the glory. Okay, now this is sad. And this is where I'm seeing the beauty of the pieces they're laying here. They even through Tony Clifton, and Tony Clifton's the first element we're going to get of this grand plan here. Where you know, Tony's releasing a really dark truth about Jim Carrey, that you know his grandparents were alcoholics, and Jim Carrey has a very tragic backstory where he grew up in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Well, basically, you know, his father, you know, he lost his job when Jim Carrey was like 12 or 13, and you know, they lived in a van for a while. He had to be a janitor in a tire factory. He had to drop out of a high school to do that. And we have this scene really touching, because again, I always love the Jim Carrey. Again, the Czech story is always a beautiful like father-son tribute, and what we hit upon here just moved me quite a great deal was the fact that when he does this impression, it's Jim Carrey doing an impression of his grandfather confronting Percy about how much of a Stanley Ipkiss-like loser he is. So,
right.
Percy, you're such a loser, but you're a nice guy. You know, it's
a hell of a guy.
And it's something so moving about. We then see the character that he made of that grandfather figure with the drunk on In Living Color. And again, it's something that's been laughed at for years, yet now we learn of this tragic context behind it. Those are very, very strategic.
Which is very much the documentary in a nutshell when you think about it, right? Just kind of just sort of like peeling back layer after layer after layer about all these people's lives. Hell, even about the fictitious life of Tony Clifton gets worked in there.
Yeah, and again, T, that's exactly what I'm talking about. We have this tragedy worked in through Tony Clifton. Tony Clifton starts it. We go through that, and then we end on Tony Clifton in real life, how all of this factors into what we're seeing with Tony Clifton.
And then by the end of the movie, somehow, as if a magic trick is pulled off, Tony Clifton becomes the big tearjerker moment of the whole movie.
Yeah, Tony Clifton has a moment. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Tony Clifton, don't know how they did that, Dragon.
It's amazing. It's the only sincere, nice moment we have with Tony Clifton. We'll get there. It is, and we'll get there. Let's not jump too ahead here. And again, this is the tragedy. I knew about this. This is the tragedy of his father. His father wanted to be a performer.
Dragon, this
player.
Story scares the shit out of me as a 20-something. I gotta say, this hit home with me.
Tiki, it hits. It's a
As
little hard
someone
for
who
me.
just started a job that I'm not 100% crazy about, it's like, look, I'm glad I'm getting paid. I'm not 100% crazy about some of the work circumstances.
Well,
I'm like, oh God. Yeah, go ahead.
I won't get into it a whole lot, but let's just say this event, the event that transpires with his father, kind of becoming an accountant to sacrificing his dream. I mean, in part that's kind of my fear. Going for the money, going for the material money option over the dream option.
Yep.
It's like it's sad.
Yeah, and just Jim's words, the whole like, if you fail at something that you don't have passion for, then what's the point? If you fail at something that you have passion for, you could say you gave it your best shot. You could say you put your all into it.
Yeah, and it's the story of a broken man. It's just so compelling in this moment here. I got to tell you, this for me is the most heartbroken I've ever been. To see Jim Carrey right here, where he's just talking about his father, see him get this emotional, and you get it absolutely.
I absolutely get this emotional sometimes talking about my father, and he totally says everyone gets emotional talking about their father like this, and yeah, I get it.
But I mean, I love that you can like. It's him processing the meaning of his father's life in this moment, and just knowing that feeling, processing that, and that's what heartbreaking. And then we circle back to the Czech story. Now we know that Czech story. Now we know the stuff associated with that, and now just that fact being laid out, just kind of clear, black and white, right in there. It adds all that extra great baggage to it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And again, now we're linking, and this is what I'm talking about. So after we get all the tragedy of Jim Carrey's upbringing through Tony Clifton, we're now getting to where things are scarily mixing with reality and fiction with Tony Clifton. And where Tony Clifton's bringing the Hells Angels with them to work. And by the way, I would like to think they're friendly.
I think it's well known that they're pretty friendly.
Really?
Yeah, it's well reported. I mean, most of them are, at least.
I gotta tell you,
like, there's different branches. There's different branches of Hell's Angels. I'm sure some of them are old school bikers, but most of them are like cuddly teddy bears of guys. They do a lot of charity work.
I gotta tell you, that's quite refreshing. I like that's a comforting thought. I like that. And again, this is what I'm talking about here with the friendly bikers, where it's Tony Clifton befriending bikers, saying Bob Zamora. Like the idea of Tony Clifton like Bob Zamora was the second Tony Clifton.
Sure.
He was the guy. He was the additional Tony Clifton before. They had like the duplicating an actor on film. You would have another guy be Tony Clifton.
Right.
Like right there, that's Andy Kauffman as Tony Clifton, and what we're going to see is Bob Zamora as Tony Clifton. Yeah.
And all this, it's like, oh, that's Andy. No, that's Bob. It kind of like, it's sort of like, weaves its way into the whole documentary. Like, oh, is that Jim? Is that Andy? Is that Tony?
And that's what I'm saying. The legend of those stories that we're hearing, we're now seeing unfold as these trying to recreating Andy Kauffman. You're going to have Andy Kauffman as stunts. That Bob Zamora on set is abdicating, and again, he's getting a chance to relive his the golden era he had with Andy Kauffman when he would be able to pull this stuff, and now he's getting a second lease of life to do that, and that's why he's pulling ways about the pull.
So it just tickles me that people thought Giamatti was like a day extra, and he just went with it. That tickles me so much.
And you got to remember, he did.
I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know what to do.
And you got to remember, in the movie, Giamatti is in the Tony Clifton makeup for a scene or two.
And
that's what I'm saying. Like Bob Zamora, he's just, again, as Bob Zamora fed into Andy Kauffman back in the day, now we're seeing Jim Carrey feed into Bob Zamora's worst instincts now. God. But as Andy Kauffman.
It's like the classic, like, devil on your shoulder kind of.
Exactly. And this is a great story. I had no idea about this story.
This might be the highlight of the whole movie right here, just on an entertainment point of view.
Oh yeah, and I love we have Andy Dick in the scene. He's remarking how good an actor Jim Carrey is to look completely different. The part, and this is just such a clever stunt, and it features the late great Hugh Hefner. There's John Lovitz, kicking people out of his comedy clubs.
Oh, God.
Take that, John Lovitz. And again, just like the Andy Kauffman, Tony Clifton stunts of the past.
Don't worry, guys. In-N-Out truck's coming in 10 minutes. But I just love the idea, just the image of and what timestamp are you on?
No, I might have just we have like 37 minutes and 43 seconds left.
Okay, we're good. I just, you mentioned the Andy Dick thing a little early. I got a little
yeah.
annoyed.
I'm sorry. Just it's gonna go. It comes by fast. This one.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I was just like, wait. Did the Andy Dick thing already? Like, what happened? Did something catastrophic happen?
So right here we have Jim Carrey's at the party, and now he was like just has the horrified realization that, oh my God, I let the wrong guy in the party. Yeah. Now, Tiki, you don't get this in the movie here, but according to Bob Zamuda, what happened, what we're not seeing, is that Hughes' guys did confiscate the tape, and the next morning, Jim Carrey and company, they had to come back and collect the tape. And either when he was taken out back or on that second day, I'm pretty sure the night of, Zamuda was threatened by Hugh Hefner directly, or Hugh Hefner said, if these people weren't around, my guys here would break every bone in your body.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're a little faint.
Okay, sorry. I just dropped my microphone.
Yeah, now you're fine. You're fine now. Did you hear me?
But Seth. All right. Anyways.
Okay, but
Jim and Andy contractually obligated Tony Clifton.
Yes. You heard what I said though about Hugh Hefner's threat though, right?
Yes. Yeah. You don't mess with Hugh Hefner, man.
No. It's kind of funny because usually like the Playboy Mansion is kind of like open, like he's usually really friendly about invites to the Playboy Mansion, but with Tony Clifton, just kind of forcing his way in there, he's not happy about that. And again, this is just this beautiful. So again, we had Jim Carrey's audition Saturday Night Live, and then now we're linking up with the Andy Kauffman to the Jerry Lawler half of this now. So we have Andy Kaufman's. Think about this as an audition. You're auditioning for, if not a musical guest, then at least as comedy guest or a musical guest for Saturday Night Live. He ended up as a musical guest. I don't know if he auditioned for that at the beginning or not, but he does like a dramatic reading instead of like a comedy thing. Instead of stand up, he's doing like you audition for a high school play.
Right. Which of course is just the whole Kaufman thing. It's like, wait, just throwing the audience expectation off their game. Like, hold on, this is not what's supposed to be going on right now.
Yeah. And again, now what's nice is that we're building it. We are building reality mixing with fiction, but right now we're starting with a surprising yet emotional version of it, where again, Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman is interacting with Kaufman's his father. It's a real loving experience, and then what we hear about, and it's amazing. I had no idea about this whatsoever. Andy Kaufman had a long lost daughter, had a daughter out of wedlock. And you got to remember, Jim Carrey is a father in real life, and he has a daughter, so that really had to reach him as Andy Kaufman interacting with the girl.
That might be the most emotional moment in the movie.
Might be. I mean, again, like this movie,
like just look into Jim's eyes right here, as he's reflecting on it.
Again, a father being able to give this girl something she would never get in life, an opportunity to talk to her father.
Right.
Again, it's such a brilliant movie with these moments included.
The thing is, this is not anything that anyone wrote. This is just naturally how life happened. Which is what the best documentaries are able to shine a light on.
Absolutely. And again, we're seeing like an uplifting version of life meeting reality like this, and then we're going to end essentially on a crazy version of that where we have the Jerry Lawler incident.
You could say, Dragon, that life found a way.
Life finds a way. Life finds a way to suck. How you like that, Goldblum?
You're terrible in those Jurassic Park pictures. Just terrible.
Hilarious to see Tony Clifton crash the set of Disaster Artist, by the way.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Like Tony Clifton getting
Seth, who is this crazy man? I thought I was supposed to be crazy man, Seth.
Crazy man? We've gone crazy man. Crazy, fangsy. Upsy daisy. Anyway, oh, by the way, so this is great here. So Andy Kauffman, again, these are the feud with Lawler here. You know, he did have these promos done. And Lawler was in on it. He got in on him after the first one was made. And I love that in that promo, you saw Andy Kauffman doing the stuff like he did with Howdy Doody, where he's messing with the picture-in-pictures, like technical difficulties.
Right.
And, you know, the thing with the wrestling that Man on the Moon kind of got backwards, that it ended on the sour note of the wrestling instead of Carnegie Hall, like the movie suggests.
Uh-huh.
And I liked how the movie approached that because it gives you a happy ending, but, you know, it's, again, they had called that in the movie itself. Anyway, let's talk for Man on the Moon, not this. Well,
yeah.
Despite this being about Man on the Moon. Hey, I love the regret on Jim Carrey. Like, he regrets the stuff that he did to Lawler. And by the way, in later years, like around 2014, he did make up with Lawler at a certain point. You know, he did apologize. He actually sent them a gift of like records that were recorded by wrestlers singing. He had like Jim Carrey's like a fantastic. Nice. It was like CDs or records. It was like an album collection of some kind that he did give him. So he did make up with him to an extent. Like Lawler didn't really get back to him, but he said he apologized at least.
Right.
This is crazy. Now, what we don't see here, essentially, it's all the important stuff's all here. But the additional thing is that shooting this, Jim Carrey, he wanted to do the stunt. At least Andy wanted to do the stunt. I guess Andy desperately wanted to do the stunt. And the insurance guy would not allow it, and he told this to Jerry Lawler, I want you to actually do it. So when we do the last take, I want you to actually do it. Don't worry about the stunt guy, just do it. And Jerry Lawler whispered this to Milos Forman. He told him he wants me to actually do it. And then Milos says, "Thank you for telling me." And he says, "Okay, folks, we're done. We're wrapping. We're done. We're not doing it."
Oh, nice.
And that's what leads to. That's what leads to Andy here getting mad at him, getting on his friends.
Yeah.
So basically, he's saying to the folks,
I was kind of wondering what the insurance company's thing was about.
Because he's yelling. See, he was yelling to the folks, "I want to do the stunt. They won't let me." Then they cut his microphone, so he couldn't speak anymore. Then he says, I'm an actor. I don't need a microphone to project. And then he basically does this right here, where he's telling the audience to shut up, and he's insulting Lawler, and he spits in his face. So again, this is life imitating art right here, where now Lawler's legitimately angry at him, and he puts him in a headlock while a guy down below is pulling him, which wrenches Carrey's neck.
And of course, earlier on in the movie, Lawler threatened, like, I could put you in this, I could do this to you anytime I want to.
Yep, and this is the amazing thing right here. So in real life, in Andy Kauffman and Lawler back in the day, they were in on it, and Andy Kauffman, he was on the ground, and basically Lawler thought, okay, Andy's he's gonna be helped up, he's gonna walk to his dressing room, but Andy Kauffman in the moment milked it. He whispered to the referee, "Call an ambulance," and he's saying, "No, it's gonna cost like $3." He keeps going back and forth to Lawler, then Kauffman lying on the ground in the neck brace position, essentially. Hey, an ambulance is going to cost $300. Says, "I'll pay for it." And basically, an ambulance was brought down there to take him out here. And Jim Carrey, years later, is pulling the same exact thing, where he is not as seriously hurt as he is, but he's milking it.
And I love Jim just describing this like, no one knew I was hurt. My people didn't know if I was hurt.
The Sugar Plum Fairy music cue is just perfect. It is.
Yes.
Because it just sounds like the gears of someone's mind turning. And again, this press report of, well, he's doing what happened years ago. To tell you this.
I love like Lawler's just totally being villainized here, just in real life,
He knew it was going to happen like this. Oh my God, it's going to be exactly what happened years ago. Only this time, I'm not in on
it. God.
And again, this is what I'm talking about to you. This is the big crescendo of life mixing with art, and it's kind of, it's amazing.
He's just so tickled that it made the news. Now, what do you think? Is this? I think this right here is like a little bit of a blend between Jim and Andy.
I think it kind of has to be because Jim Carrey's going to have to
just kind of tickled pink for different reasons that it made the news.
I think so. I think you're right about that. I think it is kind of a blend there. And again, there's a little bit of unreliable, like you don't know who's who at certain moments. So I guess it's absolutely plausible. Sure. And then this right here, the whole Jim Carrey's feeling of guilt for the antics of Andy Kauffman, and also Andy Kaufman's influence on Jim Carrey. So this I didn't know anything about either. And this is an interesting story where he went on the Arsenio Hall show. And he made a very offensive fool of himself in the moment.
Yeah.
And I had no idea this happened, and that's an example of him.
I knew about this actually.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea. I'm jumping ahead, by the way. It hasn't happened yet. I think it's going to happen soon. That's why I'm making sure I get in there. The point is, it's like Andy Kaufman, kind of like the whole Bob Zamuda Andy Kaufman thing. It's like how Andy Kaufman's now having an adverse effect on Jim Carrey, where Jim Carrey is now understanding the strain that Andy Kaufman went through, where you're going to have like those career-ending moments 24/7, where you do racy stunts that could end your career at any moment, where Andy had to put up with that backstage moment all through his life, and that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what got him, psyched for the role too. Just like had that freedom comes with a cost in real life. I will say this though. Again, I can understand at the time how this was, very offensive and poor Arsenio Hall. But I got to tell you though, it just, I can still see it funny because it's like
funny. It is legitimately funny. It's shock humor.
Yeah. It's even outside the shock humor. It's like he just throws this feeble punch at him that is completely ineffective. Just in a wild way.
Okay, this kind of goes back to the Chappelle thing, Dragon, because Dave Chappelle's whole philosophy about comedy is that he's not making racist jokes, he's making jokes about racism itself. His performance by Carrey is kind of reflective of that. You know what I mean? He's like being so derogatory that it's literally like a commentary, and what makes it funny is just how ridiculous it is. How it's literally like putting the whole idea of racism in general under a microscope.
Yeah, and what he's realizing too is that kind of freedom you could have, playing Andy Kaufman, or being Andy Kaufman, it's addicting, and it's going to get you into a place of comfort that is kind of scary. Yeah.
I love how, the idea that Jim has he had just a little taste of what Andy was going through his whole life, his whole career.
Yeah. Now we have this, the hit me moment here. So again, now this was staged. Here's the thing. They didn't know exactly how it was going to go down, but it was staged. And I love that we see with Lawler here, despite the antagonistic thing with Jim Carrey, we see in that backstage moment where he's just watching the old clip. I love that he's not laughing at the fact that he got hit. He's laughing at David Letterman's expression, which shows you that he was friends with Andy Kaufman visually in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so here, and I love how this is edited too, like the fact that like an egg dropped on him and just like Andy Kaufman's playing it all innocent. It's just playing like he just heard about this. Like what? It just shows that something bad's about to happen. And here's where the the life imitating art takes a new turn, where back then it was a stage slap where he told him to hit him, and right before they go on, he tells Lard, Jim Carrey tells Lard to hit him, and Lard hit him really extra hard than he hit Andy Kaufman because he's really legitimately ticked off at him.
Oh yeah.
And if you listen, you can hear like the slap of that cast. Like he really you can hear the sound of him hitting that cast on his neck, the neck brace. And the only difference that the movie had here, and the way this scene is shot, you can see as it's lined up in the movie, is that there was a commercial break before Andy went back and yelled at Laura. That was the only difference. But again, it was all verbatim what happens, though.
Mm-hmm.
Where that's why he's saying, "Oh, F-bomb there," because he's like, he didn't expect to be that. That's legitimate pain right there in that scene. But I mean, at the same time, it got him there. It's like he's in the headspace he imagined Andy Kauffman would be in, assuming that feud.
Yeah, exactly. That was the whole point. Sure,
it got him there. And again, it's Jim Carrey realizing, that it's all theater. It's all
like word for word what happened on the actual show.
Yeah, that's all word for word. Again, there was a commercial break when he came back yelling at him, but it's exactly what happened.
Wow.
So I always love this story, and I wish if I would take it. Of course, I am by no means a celebrity. If I were a celebrity, I would love to try this, though. I'd love to try just standing there doing nothing. It's such a kind of an awesome way to refute the paparazzi, where it's just like, what are you doing? Nothing. Why can't celebrities handle the paparazzi and stuff like that now? That'd be awesome.
Right.
It's just all them stopping.
It's simple, but
yeah, I know. I just love the fantasy that's simple.
Yeah.
It can't always work like that.
It's like just the idea of being boring is like the anti-paparazzi repellent.
So, I mean, look, they're giving him ice for that slap just now. Of course, the Ed Harris of it all here, and this is where the Truman stuff is just used so expertly well. Right here, we have two big scenes from the Truman Show are pulled right here, and then towards the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Giamatti's in that movie too. Just so you know.
Oh, he is. Yeah,
you saw it too. He was in the earlier clip when he's putting the soap on the window. You can see him in that scene.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I really need to watch this movie. I really do.
Oh, yeah. And again, Ed Harris has a big role in the movie too. I mean, I know you like Ed Harris. That's the main reason to watch the movie.
Nice.
So again, now what we're building here, and what I love, and I think it's the big make or break moment, because earlier in the movie, he spoke to there's like three ways to interpret Andy Kauffman. It's either you get the joke, you don't get it, or you were sidled with the persona.
Which is of course the way that Man on the Moon opens. That's the whole point of the cold open of Man on the Moon.
Exactly, and what we're doing, and this is so clever to me, Tiki, and this is ever since the first watch of the movie, I always love this. I love on the rewatch, you can see it's the seeds being laid here, and there's Giamatti.
Mm-hmm.
There is that Jim Carrey kind of talking about reflecting on kind of the madness of it's Hollywood, how it's like a lot of it is fake, and like how basically these big head trippy thoughts that he's kind of airing out right there, how it all at the end, the grand scheme, it doesn't really matter, in a way.
It's kind of like a bookend too, because the whole movie opened on this big, hey, how do you want to start the movie, Jim? Oh, let's see, with the meaning of life.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like those big those mind-breaking moments, and we're seeing that. What we're seeing is the big. Well, I mean, sure, I guess. What I'm saying is we're seeding to the big make or break moment that I said. Remember, this movie's in my top 10 for the movies of 2017.
Right.
And at the very end, we have a moment where he basically gets into a really out there thought, where again, you either get it or you don't. And it's a simple fact where if you don't buy into the movie, you can look at Jim Carrey as, okay, I get what I'm listening. I'm open enough to hear what he's saying, or you're going to look at it as, okay, Jim Carrey post going crazy, and now he's just lost it. Or the third way of just, I don't get this at all. It's like those are your three options. That's what the ending gets to. Again, we have those little seeds here and there building to that big, that huge, great end note. But let's take us through your thoughts on the Carnegie Hall.
Oh, I don't know. It's just fascinating to me. Just the whole idea of the dichotomy of the yin yang of, him. This was right after his cancer diagnosis. And this is the biggest moment in his career, Dragon, I don't know much about this performance beyond what we're shown here and what was in Man on the Moon, but it's definitely something I want to look more into.
Sure. I gotta look into it again, but from what I remember, I want to say that the movie put it after the cancer diagnosis. In real life, I think he had the cancer diagnosis after the wrestling stuff. Basically, Carnegie got switched around to wrestling.
Okay.
That's in real life. That's what I gotta look into it again. So don't take me at face value on it. I'm saying I'm pretty sure that's how it went.
Jim himself is saying that he's doing the Carnegie Hall stuff Into the Void.
Oh yeah, you're right about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't really know about.
Look, and the point is, like,
I don't know, just the whole idea, like the whole like everything in the Christmas sync vibe of this show that I'm getting.
Oh yeah, because he has to keep the energy level. Andy Kauffman, he basically did what he does, but he had to keep it going for an entire Carnegie Hall, performance. He had to keep it going for a whole night. So if he lost the audience, he was going to win them back no matter what.
Right.
That's the thing. It's like 24/7. That Andy Kaufman stunt after Andy Kaufman stunt, and having basically getting bigger and bigger with each act, building to the crescendo.
God.
And again, here I like that we're approaching this at a distance. Then I love how we see the scene being filmed, then we cut back to the finished scene itself.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of adds like an oomph, like adds an impact of Andy Kaufman breaking the news to his friends that he has lung cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And again, look at Giamatti in that scene. It's like DeVito, like DeVito's moment. This is the father figure moment I'm talking about here, which is Andy. I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me it's true.
Oh yeah.
Like DeVito is really good in that movie. He is so good, and again, he produced it too. He just did an excellent job. And again, this is great how we explore the making of this movie chronologically. So we explore kind of as playing Andy Kaufman. There is a point you reach where it's starting to develop a little bit of sympathy for Tony Clifton because he's playing Tony Clifton now as the dying Tony Clifton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Which is crazy to think about.
And again, we're getting to like that one amazingly lovable moment with Tony Clifton. The only genuine nice thing Tony Clifton ever says. We get that in the big production rap scene. He's playing like a fading Andy Kaufman, which is trippy and kind of sad to see.
Oh, I gotta say, trying to get all this fading Andy Kaufman stuff, just the body language, the way that he like slowly gets out of the car and into the wheelchair and stuff like that. That is like better than any performance in the actual movie. You know what I mean?
And again, here's like another seed I'm talking about. Where Jim Carrey's talking about these big heady thoughts of like, we all desire to end in life.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to worry about anything.
Which is not true. I don't want to die. I don't want to die ever.
All right. I'm just.
Okay. I have the option ever in my lifetime. I will Walt Disney cryogenic freeze my ass.
Okay, the Mr. Freeze route. I got it.
Yes. If that ever becomes an option, Dragon, I will go out of my way to do that. I'm speaking real here.
Right. Now again, I'm assuming he actually shaved his head for this. Again, that just shows you the commitment.
Oh, I'm sure he did. Yeah.
Yeah, going on there. And it makes me wonder throughout the whole film if he had the wig from the very beginning or not. But then again, he has there are those scenes where he's getting made up as Tony Clifton and he has hair, so I don't think it was through the whole production, but at a certain point he had to get the hair shaved, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Of course, we set up when he's getting his hair washed for the shave, I guess. He was starting to sing Space Oddity, and I love how we build to the Space Oddity sequence.
Oh yeah.
We use music to great effect all throughout this film.
Oh, absolutely. Dragon, is there an album of Tony Clifton anywhere?
I mean, you can find Tony Clifton performances. I'm sure. Like Tony Clifton did. It wasn't
I'm just
the
curious if there's like an official live Tony Clifton album, though.
I mean, on the Man on the Moon Sea, you have him singing "I Will Survive." The songs that he sings in the movie. You can find those songs. I don't know about like a whole album, but you can also find him interacting with the Muppets.
Oh, really? Oh, I need to look into that.
He doesn't. Here's the thing: he is performing for the Muppets. I don't know if he doesn't like directly meet him, but he is the Muppets comment on Tony Clifton. Like Miss Piggy loves Tony Clifton.
Oh my God! Oh, Tony.
Well, I mean,
again. Oh, I love Tony Clifton.
I love you too. Love you on a breakfast special, particularly.
Oh, talk more to me, Tony. All right. All right.
Anyway, no, but seriously, it's like more like, you know, she's interested by him, where Kermit the Frog is like, he just doesn't get him. Frankly, I don't get it.
So there it's like people who get Kauffman and people who don't.
Yeah. So again, like this whole, you know, Andy Kauffman being reduced to a little glow, and just that little, just the weakened glow compared to like kind of the big personality on set who's messing around with Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, it's legitimately haunting to watch, I think.
It is. And again, like, if you go into this production knowing your main guy is going to be method, and you realize it's a biopic, and traditionally most biopics end in death.
God.
Traditionally.
Well, not all of them. My favorite biopic, The Social Network, doesn't, but I digress.
I'm just saying most. Or I'm saying most are like life stories that end in death, because life's end in death. Unless we have freezing
technology. Dragon, except mine, because I'm going to Walt Disney my ass.
Yes, unless we have freezing. Unless we have cryogenics, all right?
I'm going to do it.
I believe you. I don't know, there's always something about this song. It kind of improves any scene it's attached to. Again, opening the Valerian.
Yep.
Now again, like right here, where we just link up with the scene here where he's being driven to the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, in Deadpool, they actually had a scene where Wade Wilson went to a clinic like this. It was a deleted scene where they had a whole different version of him getting separated from Vanessa, and it was going to be, he was going to kill the doctor who was fake, because Andy Kauffman, when he went for treatment and Bob Zmuda was there and he saw this, they palmed, the healer palms the tumor, and that's what it was in the Deadpool movie too, because that's what those guys do. They give people false hope about that sort of thing. They pretend to take out the cancer tumors. Yeah. It's kind of I don't know. It's kind of like a fitting, like it, you know, kind of a falsehood thing with Andy Kauffman. I don't know. It's kind of like a whole, like, it's a trickery thing. It's kind of it's kind of dark and kind of a tragedy with him.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, like this free will thing that Jim Carrey's going on about here. But again, like, if you're buying into it, I'm buying into it. At least I'm open enough to hear him say, because yeah, that is a good point. If you're thirsty, you take a drink. You know, that's not necessarily free will.
And of course, if you take a drink of tea, then Howard Hamlin's just going to be off to the side, like, yeah, drink that tea, yeah.
So while we're talking about these moments with Jim Carrey's father, and of course the Tony Clifton moment about to come up, you have Howard Hamlin watching this film, and when Jim Carrey mentions that tea thing, you have like a Tobey Maguire tear drop down his face.
Oh, man. That's just the cherry on top of everything that just cinches it for him.
And with Howard Hamlin too, you just have this him remarking, "That's how Dad would have wanted it."
Oh man.
So again, look at all these people with these bags on their faces. This guy who gave him so much grief, and Jim Carrey reveling, and like they care about that guy despite all the hardship. He's hugging Danny DeVito. Look, that's all nice. So now here's the one moment, the one night, the nicest thing I've ever seen an approximation of Tony Clifton ever say.
Yes.
Where he actually, Tony Clifton gets emotional. He's never gotten emotional. He gets emotional saying, and
and of course, in the nature of this documentary, it's also Jim getting emotional.
I know, that's the thing, and this is the fact that he's still in characters. Tony Clifton kind of breaking through that a little there.
See him kind of cracking character a little bit as he's going through the speech. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you could also read it as Tony Clifton always has to be the bad guy to Andy Kauffman. But the idea that Tony Clifton, this anti-Andy Kauffman, is being, he's...
So in a way, it's kind of like Andy Kauffman breaking character as Tony Clifton via Jim Carrey.
Yeah, it's like Tony Clifton saying something nice about the guy he's tormented for all these years, saying we should all count ourselves blessed. We should all count ourselves under lucky stars to have known Andy Kauffman, because he always says, I don't know no Andy Kauffman. He always says, Andy Kauffman, grab a couple of shovels and a flashlight. Again, this is nice and pathetic here, where he's mentioning Jim Carrey has no regrets. Like he didn't want to go back to it, but the one regret he does have is that REM, who is half the reason the movie got made as well, because REM had the Great Beyond song, which was very popular and titled the movie essentially.
Right.
So the fact that he just you gotta imagine it's such like an in-depth experience. You become Andy Kauffman for like for a number of months, I guess. You can't just snap right back into that. He just needed time to decompress and figure himself out. He just.
I like how the documentary addresses that too at the end. You know, it's like, okay, we're gonna kind of like do this wind down at the end of everything.
Yeah. Oh, this moment here where he's putting his hands in the cement. His daughter added, and this is really sweet. His daughter added the ... like right there where he has his hands in the cement. He writes merrily, 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 merrily. That's what he's writing right now, and he put his daughter's thumbprints as the ...
Aw,
this is really nice. So yeah, like now he's now Jim Carrey's living a world where he's facing the problem. He's facing his problems now with the insight of Andy Kauffman. Of like, it kind of opened his perspective a little bit more.
right.
You know, it's again like all that. This is what I meant to say, but I said way earlier on is that you know, the freedom that he had as this other persona is addicting and comforting, and now he has to kind of snap back into real life with that. You know, now that
Like,
Andy Kaufman's not in the driver's seat anymore.
Like crap.
That's the thing, because if you hand yourself over, it's like he atrophied himself. You know, like you go into space, you get in like a relaxed state for so long. Yeah, he wasn't in the driver's seat with Andy and taking control. Now he's readjusting after that. It makes sense. So here we go. Now we're at the big ending, folks. This is what I'm talking about. This is the make or break moment. Where it's just this final statement. This final statement, it more than tells how the role impacted Carrey. I think that's what's really telling. You can kind of tell in what he's saying where he's saying the way he calls back the great beyond and it being Andy, him saying that shows that it kind of shows that I'm not saying that he's lost it, but I'm just saying it shows that he's different. You know, it shows that he's hearkening back to something obvious with Andy being the main reason why we're there, just showing that he's a little insecure in what he's saying for that moment.
Yeah, and and I like how the music cuts out too. You know what I mean? At this point, it's just Jim.
That's the thing, is you either get it, you scoff at it, or you just say, "Boy, he's crazy now."
And I think all three of those reactions are not necessarily inappropriate reactions to have.
Yeah.
I know. I think there's a lot of truth in what he's saying, though. I really do. Like,
I'm with you.
You know, the whole idea of like family and like what is a family, what makes you a Canadian, you know, it's just like a geographical line in the sand, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Heavy, yes, it's all very much like, you know, kind of like a college philosophy class, but it's relevant, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact that, you know, he's not a lot of people are honest like this, and that's why people might scoff at it. Because again, I think deep down they're not gonna, like, Jim Carrey's being remarkably honest, and we rarely get this in interviews. You know, rarely do you get such an honest interview, someone being this open and vulnerable with somebody, just kind of spelling this out. And like right here, and this scene from the Truman Show is very, it's very pivotal, and it's a brilliant pull for the end of this movie. Again, him talking about facing the abyss. That's what Truman is doing in that moment.
Sure.
And again, what that's about is, you know, it's Jim Carrey daring to be who he is over a cliche or a familiar face of Hollywood. You know, again, Truman brings it all whole with that moment.
Of course.
You know, you're walking into an unknown, otherwise a great beyond. And it's a question of like how aware and honest are you about going on that journey? You know, Jim and Andy or the audience. It's like, are you Jim? Are you Andy? Are you the audience? And again, this is like the big heady question too. Like, what if I portray Jesus? That's the thing that's going to lose people, or you're going to be wowed by him. You know?
God, yeah.
Because again, it's like it's an amazing. I think it's a brilliant thought to end on. Like, yeah, he has the beard. Well, if he became, I think that's half the reason he kept the beard for that response almost. Like,
Now that's method acting right there.
I'm just saying, I know it's
like, you know what? Just to make my point in an interview, I'm going to keep the beard.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he didn't do it on purpose, but imagine if he did, though. That's what I'm saying. But I mean, seriously, I mean, we saw how in character he got there. It's like, yeah, what if I became other people? I mean, it's a mind blowing thought. Yeah, if he became like a religious messiah,
it's almost like his superpower in a way.
Yeah, it's something that we scoff at in these cynical times, but it's quite a thought. You know, it's such an interesting thought.
Uh-huh. All right, so we're kind of getting down to the last of it.
Yeah. Now this is cool. This is really neat here. How it's kind of it's like a lingering Andy Kauffman mind game to Bob Zmuda, and this is clever on the rewatch. I didn't catch this on the first time. That it's basically this is the sell of the movie, the hook that hey, Universal took the footage back, and in this moment, it's him. He's playing a trick on Bob Zmuda. It's like he's trying to convince Bob Zmuda that, and Zmuda's saying, well, technically, you'd still own the rights, wouldn't you? But again, it makes you question, was this whole movie, did he just hold on to the rights, or did the whole premise of the movie, is it true or not?
Uh-huh.
It's basically him, like, obviously it's true, but I'm saying in the moment he's trying to mess with Bob Zmuda like Andy Kauffman would, making him question, hey, is it true? Did you guys watch this movie for nothing? Was it real, or was it? So it's kind of a heady thought they have in the mid-credits. Sure. So, and I thought it was clever on a rewatch, and I was like, yeah, that's neat. If that's what they're going for, I'm reading into it, but you know. So, how'd you like it?
Yeah, just kind of getting into final thoughts, I guess. Dragon, first of all, I got to apologize. I just think you're by far the bigger Jim Carrey fan, the bigger Andy Kauffman fan. I don't really have as much to say in this. Apologize for that. You kind of definitely dominated the not in a bad way, but you know, you about this than I did. And I think that's kind of natural given that you grew up with both Kauffman and Jim Carrey. But just from an outsider's point of view, I think this is a fascinating documentary. It's not in my top 10. It is in my top 20. I believe it's like 17. So it's up there. And, you know, this year was a very good top 20. And, you know, it's definitely the best documentary I've seen in some time. I've seen in a while. It's very effective in what it sets out to do. The editing is just so on point. This rabbit hole, this headspace that you know, like I remember the first time watching this movie, Dragon, was of course I stayed up until the night that it was released on Netflix. And so you can imagine the head trip going until 1:30 in the morning. God, I felt like I was just on like an acid trip or something, you know, by the time the movie was over with all the headiness. So yeah, like I said, I'm sure you have much more personal things associated with this movie, and I'm not surprised that you kind of dominated the conversation, even though, like I said, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just, I just don't frankly have as much to say as you do about it. But, you know, I quite enjoyed myself with this. It's a very enlightening experience, very enlightening indeed.
Right.
Pause, Dragon.
I can't say enough nice things about this movie. I really can't. Again, it was everything I was hoping for. I'm so glad that people are receiving it as well as I would have hoped they would receive it. Again, so far, man, I'm seeing nothing but praise and response, and people are talking about it. Again, it's Andy Kauffman back in the conversation again. Also, again, we're looking at Jim Carrey again. Jim Carrey, he's he has made movies since Kick-Ass 2, but he is still. I mean, they're kind of smaller movies. They're ones that aren't really talked about. He hasn't done like a big studio movie like like he used to. But yeah, this again with a movie that just famously, it's like it was such a good movie in Carrey's career. Man on the Moon. It also kind of was a great reflection of Andy Kauffman, but also one of Jim Carrey's finest performances ever. One of them, you know, there's a number of great Jim Carrey performances. You know, Eternal Sunshine and Truman Shows. There's a number of them. But again, like this was just a reflection of something I always kind of wanted to see from Man on the Moon. Like, you know, what like there was no commentary on Man on the Moon, which is you know, maybe fodder for another future discussion. Who knows?
Oh, but, yeah, we'll fix that at some point. I just don't want to put them all out, you know, one after another. But
yeah, sure. The point is, it's this movie is everything I wanted it to be.
Maybe during Jim Carrey month.
Yeah, sure. My point is, you know, this movie, it was everything I could have hoped for it to be. I mean, you know, the only gripe I had, which again they kind of surpassed my expectations, where I wanted to see the other half of that audition footage, but again, thematically they did that, so I'm happy with that by all means. So this, yeah, the structure of this movie, it's so rewatchable for me. It absolutely is top 10 material. This and Batman and Bill are my favorite documentaries of 2017. It was just, it was an absolute blast. It's a fantastic character study of Jim Carrey through a not a fictional character, but through a real character that he's brought to life. It's such an ambitious, out there idea, and made for such a compelling, awesome documentary. And I love seeing Netflix utilized to its full potential in moments like this, where they have these.
I feel like documentaries are kind of Netflix's forte. It's like their bread and butter at this point.
I'd say nothing thrills me more when I go in the documentary section of Netflix. I find all this great material, and I love it when we get like the material like this, and it just fills me with such delight. So again, kudos to Netflix when they pull something off like this. I encourage more high caliber documentaries like this, more Netflix original productions and movies and stuff like this, because they've also like Bob Odenkirk's movie Girlfriends, like a whole number of other great Netflix stuff that's been produced. So again, this thing it was top marks all around for me. Just had a great time with it. It made me think profoundly about Jim Carrey, which I hadn't really had to do in years, because he's kind of dropped off the mark. He's kind of dropped off the map since 2014, to be quite honest. And this is a great way of kind of bringing him back a little and looking at his. Looking at Jim Carrey in a way I never really had to look at him before. So I can't say enough nice things about it. So I will cut it off there. I will say it has been an honor, and it's been a good be. I've got to be me.
It's Corey Feldman. Hey, it's Corey Feldman, everybody.